Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Is Professor Sattar here?
Yes, Mr. Lee, I'm here. Thank
How are
you.
you, Professor Sattar?
Very good. Thank you. Thanks to you for hosting.
I wish I'm in Singapore, meeting you. Oh my God.
Well, these are unprecedented times.
Yeah, this is the best time, yes.
Yeah, but this is the new normal that we have to begin to adjust. As I spoke to a lot of my colleagues in the US and other parts of the world, a lot of companies are now adjusting to this. So over to you, Chris.
All right, I think we can get started now. Thank you, everybody, once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining this webinar today, titled Leadership Through COVID-19 Crisis. We're very honored to have Professor Sattar Bawany to share his thoughts on how we can navigate through this crisis with the right leadership skill set. So before we start, I'd like to do a bit of house rules for this webinar. Professor Sattar Bawany will speak for the next 45 minutes. During this time, everyone will be muted so that we minimize the distraction to the audience. However, if you have any questions, please feel free to put in your questions through the chat box. We will collate the questions for Professor Bawany to respond to at the end of the session. We will reserve the last 15 minutes for Q&A. Okay, so Professor, if I can move on to the next slide to do a bit of introduction about you.
Okay.
Right, a bit of a bio on Professor Sattar Bawany. He's a C-suite certified master executive coach. Professor Bawany is a very familiar face at human resource conferences. He speaks about talent management, talks about leadership effectiveness, and also international business. He has consulted for numerous companies, including companies from the healthcare and also professional services industries. Professor Bawany is also the author of a book published under the Business Expert Press. The book is titled Transforming the Next Generation Leaders, Developing Future Leaders for Disruptive, Digital-Driven Era of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. At the same time, he's also doing an update to a book which is due to be published in Q3 of this year. This is also, in a way, taking into learnings from the COVID-19 pandemic. So with that, I'll hand over the mic to Professor Bawany. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Very good afternoon, and welcome to this webinar. And I, first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Lee, the Group CEO and Chairman and CEO of iGroup Asia Pacific, for hosting this event, and also the team from iGroup in organizing this. It's a pleasure to have all of you here. This is as I mentioned earlier in my brief conversation with Mr. Lee earlier, that this is unprecedented times which require us to adopt unprecedented measures. And the title that that I thought would be appropriate, we talk about leadership through COVID-19 crisis, and how do we navigate the VUCA challenges that has been presented by COVID-19, and also the impact of the pandemic on business, on livelihood, on families, on economies worldwide has been reported very widely. And I'll talk about some of this and what does it mean to you as a leader. So I'm going to focus more from a leadership standpoint, and how do you navigate the VUCA world of the COVID-19 era today. So to start off, let me see. Okay. So start off, let me just let me just go back to the a bit about the edge. So I will do a little bit brief introduction. I will talk about COVID-19 very briefly. And the first 3 points about the VUCA characteristics, I will not go in depth, but I will give you some references. You can go into my website and other resource. You can perhaps look at it for detail. But what I like to do is to focus on the number 4, number 5, number 6, which is what's your role as a leader during these challenging times? What are the top 10 recommended leadership actions that you can take? And also, what is Leadership 4.0? And the Paragon 7 leadership competency that is expounded in my book, the first book, which you can adopt also in developing resilience in managing the challenges that we are facing in the COVID-19. So I will focus on those last 4. Then we have a Q&A. Yeah. Now, COVID-19, as you know, the name has been termed by WHO in February, but prior to that, it's just called Wuhan virus. It's called coronavirus. Actually, it's not really new in the sense that coronavirus or COV, they are been in existence for quite some time. They are large family viruses which attack the respiratory system, upper respiratory tract. And prior to COVID-19, you have the MERS CoV and the SARS CoV, which in Asia, Singapore, China, Singapore, Hong Kong, been tremendously impacted. And what is interesting, there's a link there, who.int. You can go to the website, you can get a lot of information on coronavirus, and that is the authoritative source. My advice is a lot of fake news, a lot of things being out there. You need to make sure that you look at the authoritative source for factual information before you share with your employee, your staff, your colleagues, your family, or you go to your respective country Ministry of Health or the health authority, which I'm sure they will be able to provide. There's a resource website for each country by the government to help you to understand a little bit better about the coronavirus. So the coronavirus is the COVID-19 is a new strain. Okay, and the scientific name is called SARS-CoV-2. That's a name, scientific name, but the disease, the strain of the virus is called COVID-19. And what is interesting, when it first was discovered and reported to WHO on 31st of December 2019, hence the name COVID-19. The word COVID-19, C stands for corona, the CO, corona, and V stands for virus, I stands for infection, D for disease, and 19 stands for the year in which it was discovered. It was primarily in China, in Wuhan, and it was then spread, of course, to other parts of the world, which I will talk about. But the challenge is that now scientists are discovering more and more about COVID-19, and one of the things is that how it's been transmitted from person to person. There are many ambiguity or a lot of facts coming in as countries like US, Italy, Spain, UK are also experiencing, doing more research to that, besides China, of course. And so we're discovering more and more. And the latest that it could be possible that COVID-19 could be transmitted through aerosol or through speaking close to someone. It could be transmitted in the air. And again, there are some research in the US and Europe, a limited study in China, but you need to be well informed. My advice is that go to WHO website or CDC in the US to get more credible information about COVID-19. Now, very quickly, we all know, we have listened to the news every day on TV, radio, on social media. The amount of information on COVID-19 has been tremendous every day. And I subscribe to many news because of the book I'm writing on COVID-19 challenges. I subscribe to as many 100 journals, articles, and reading up a lot of scientific reports to understand, also business journals, business report about how the impact of COVID-19 on business. And first of all, we talk about the production. We all know, because the Wuhan in Hubei province is a center of the Chinese manufacturing hub, and that has impacted a lot of production in China. It slowed down also the export to goods to China or to Hubei, to the manufacturing plant, but they were shut down by the government, Chinese government, and there were a lot of travel, what we call the border restriction, travel restriction, and therefore it disrupted the supply chain. And what does it mean is that many many companies worldwide will rely on imported goods from China, and likewise, manufacturing China will depend on parts from other country. Because of that, it has tremendously impact the supply chain and disruption in terms of the goods and services in many countries in the world. Next, we talk about the economy. Since February, there has been late February, March, the stock market has suffered a tremendous loss never seen before, as bad or even worse than the global financial crisis, and it's expected to continue to be volatile, and this is something which is unfortunate, and the economic impact is far much more greater. Many countries putting in stimulus measures, economic stimulus measures to boost their economy, to be able to ensure the sustainability of their respective businesses, in particular the SME, the small medium enterprise. And these are smaller businesses which are the most hardest hit. And they are the one that likely to be, you likely see them perhaps will not survive, and because many experts are predicting that the COVID-19 will last until end of the year or even to early next year. So a lot of there's opportunity, of course. So if you look at it, just like aviation, tourism, industries are hardest hit. Hotels and so forth, but there is also opportunity for organizations to look at those with cash rich, to look at way for consolidation, restructuring, mergers and acquisition. So there are opportunities. Airline, yesterday, the German airline, the budget airline called Golden Wings has announced, Lufthansa have announced the closure of their budget airline, and Singapore Airline has reduced up to 90% of their travel the routes worldwide, because there's no activity, a lot of border restriction across the world, and this is going to continue. And in US, the government is putting substantial support to the aviation industry. It cannot fail, and this is the same thing that many other countries are facing as well. So you're going to see the economic impact going to be worse, and there's going to be a recession, and there'll be a global, it's already a sign of global recession, but the concern is whether it will lead to depression. That is the challenge. Now, so let's talk about VUCA very quickly. What the characteristics of COVID-19, if you look at, as I've studied the COVID-19, I've never seen, I've studied the oil crisis in the 70s, the Asian financial crisis in 97, 98. I've studied the dot-com bust in 2001. The SARS virus in 2003, 2004, the global financial crisis in 2008, 2009. Never have I seen the impact on business is so great. The impact on not only business, on nation, on society, on family, economy, huge. And the COVID-19, clearly the characteristics of the scale, the magnitude, clearly can be seen from what we call the VUCA. What does VUCA stand for? It's volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. I won't go in depth. You can see the link there, ce-global.com/VUCA. You can go and read up more about that. In my book, of course, in my book, The Transforming Nature of Leaders, I talk about VUCA, also about the characteristics. So what is it? It's interesting, according to the Bob Johansen 2012, that the world is going to become more uncertain, more disruptive, because he was looking at the digital transformation, which is the focus of my first book, looking at the Industry 4.0, and he's looking at also the world and how we develop because of the uh, globalization, what is happening, world between the digital divide and the East and West and so forth. It's going to become more volatile, more uncertain, more complex, and more ambiguous and in the next 40 years. And this is exactly what COVID-19 presents: the complexity, the volatility, the ambiguity, the uncertainty. And you see on the slide on the right, what does complexity mean? There are many decision factors which impact on the scenario of COVID-19. The volatility, the rate of change is so fast, and I'll talk about that, the death rate and the confirmed cases. The ambiguity, what does it mean? A lot of lack of clarity, a lot of fake news out there. You need to be mindful. And the uncertainty, how long this is going to present. So let me now go, as I said, if you want to know more, go to the website ce-global.com at the bottom there, /VUCA. Yeah. Now, let me just go through quickly. I won't go in there. I want to spend time on the leadership action. So number one, volatility. What does it mean? Okay, so if you look at what has happened, in the next, well, if I will look at, since I've been following up on COVID-19 since, if I would say late December, even before it was announced, WHO, because there was some articles coming out of China, and of course since mid-January it become largely publicized because of WHO statement. So the volatility in terms of the number of cases reported, and I'll give you some statistics later, the confirmed cases, resulting death is really shocking. In last night I was looking at the numbers in the US, and which I will talk about a little bit later. But the volume, the impact, the speed in which the number of cases, death has increased over the last 1 month in Europe. China used to be the epicenter in January. In February, late February, Italy started to have been epicenter in in Europe. Then in March, then we have Spain, the US, and the UK. And the US is now the UK is the epicenter of COVID-19 in Europe, and US. The whole of US is now going through, especially in New York, in Connecticut, in New Jersey, in California, Florida, in many states in US now. New York is the hardest hit. So the speed is phenomenal. And also what is challenging is volatile, that is unknown, the duration. We do not know how long will this last, the speed. So second is the uncertainty of COVID. The scientists up to today cannot predict, what is the next move, the mutation of the virus. How does it is going to mutate? There's no vaccine up to today. There is a human trial now in US going through, is currently being tested, but it takes about 18 months generally. But I think with all the resources worldwide, both private sector and government putting in, hopefully it would be available earlier in terms of perhaps end of the year. And also, question is uncertain. How long will it last? Some government looking at the WHO unable to give a timeline. It could be end of the year, could be next year. But what is worrying is that there are the low developing economy or the least developing economy like in Africa. This is a challenge in Africa now. It started to increase because when you look at India, Indonesia, Africa nations where you have the infrastructure, the healthcare infrastructure cannot support this. That means that this is going to become much more intense in the months to come, and the way it's going to impact the economy and society. So the WHO has recently issued advisory that all nations have to come forward. And last night, the WHO Director General talked about how, putting politics aside, countries have to come together and support this as a global movement together to combat this enemy, unseen enemy. Now let's look at the complexity. The complexity, as of last night, I got the statistics. They were, according to the WHO, you can see the link there. You can go to who.int, go to situation report. There are 1.35 million confirmed cases with 79,325 deaths. It's very complex, and people doesn't know how little. Initially, it's not known how little. A lot of some political leaders, some scientists thought it would be less lethal than SARS, although it's highly transmittable. I mean, the transmission rate could be increased, but the situation has changed now. You look at what's happening in Italy, the number of deaths, the death rate you can see there in the on the right hand side, 7.94%, Iran 6.1%, and compared to China, which 3.4, and UK 2.1, and US is 1.68. But this again was in end of March, but things could have changed in US because in New York. So the point is, it's so complex, and yet we are learning as we study. For example, especially in China, used to be the epicenter where it all started. As of yesterday, it was 81,802, and the death was 3,333. So US has, now overtaken, of course, Italy in terms of the number of deaths. US has the highest, greater than China. So we do not know how it will evolve, and it's expected to get worse. And US is expecting in August for the outbreak to the pandemic to peak, meaning that it will start to slow down. So you get, and there's some modeling. We talk about between 100 to 200,000 deaths in the US alone, in UK as well. So, and it could be worse if it's not contained. So there is modeling being out there, put in the for countries to look at and how to put in place containment measures. And also the ambiguity. There are a lot of scientific questions. Where is the origin of the Wuhan virus or the COVID-19? Originally, the origin was thought to come from the Wuhan seafood market. But interestingly, what has happened is that if you look at the report by Lancet, the British Medical Journal, look at some of the report even by the Chinese, the early scientific report, when you look at the first 500 cases of the COVID-19, in those days you call it coronavirus, or novel, they call it novel coronavirus, NCOV, or novel coronavirus at that time, that only half of people who were infected has confirmed that they have been to the Wuhan seafood or have interacted with someone who has been there, whereas the other half has no idea, or doctor have no idea through their own contact tracing, to do their own investigation, where do these people get the virus? So there's a lot of conspiracy theory. Does it come from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which is one of the best, the Chinese Institute of Research, which could be seen as a source? So there's a lot of conspiracy theory, and there was a book that you can see on my, on my screen here, on the slide on the right. Someone published even about the various conspiracy theories around the virus, coronavirus. Now, the things that they are also, what more important is the ethical questions, because a lot of governments, without having the enough information. Chinese government initially was a little bit more protective. They're not sharing information despite requests from the US and other countries, except WHO. They allow limited access by WHO. But so a lot of things we do not know as much as the Chinese. Now, there's also the question of ethical response, how government is responding to this pandemic. So that is the challenge. So let me now come to the most important part, knowing what you know now. So let's talk about your role as a leader. I've looked at this, I've studied looking at organizations, Coca-Cola, Caterpillar, looking at Prof, many other organizations that Marriott and so forth, how to respond to this crisis, how the leaders, top leadership, the CEOs and leaders that has responded in leading the teams and organization during this challenging time. So that is the most important. What do you need to do? We have to be able to demonstrate true leadership or authentic leadership during this time. The strongest leader who will emerge in this crisis will be those that are able to deal with the short term. It's very important. Now, they need to deal with the short term, the health of the employee, protect the employee, because this is COVID-19 is a matter of public health. So first and foremost, this is where the government of each country is addressing. Second, business leaders have to look at short term, how to ensure psychological safety of the employee, how to work with the customers to resolve their challenge, to be a true partner, and look at their business, and also, of course, the public, to be socially responsible. What can you do? And lastly, while addressing the short term, it's important to look at the rebound when the COVID-19, with the vaccine coming on board, when the treatment is found. What do you do? What do you need to do to ensure the business will continue? So you cannot wait until then. So you need to prepare now to ensure when the time comes for the rebound, you are ready, already in place to seize the opportunity. And to do that, you need to understand the situation in your industry. What are some other players are doing? What your competitors are doing? What are other players in other countries? Look at multiple scenarios. Develop scenario planning. Use scenario planning as a tool, but looking at the short-term horizon, a year, 3 years, 5 years. Look at even as short as 3-6 months, because because things continue to evolve immediately. A lot of things going to change. So you need to prepare for the short term and the long term to lay the foundation for recovery. Now, I would recommend a top 10 action as follows. Number one, you need to establish rapid response war room. Now, by now, when I started writing this in February, by now, I think many of my clients, many, not all, most of the large MNC global organizations have this in place. But even for SMEs, smaller companies, GLCs, even smaller family-owned business, you can still do this. Now, what is the war room? It's basically a rapid response, a group of senior level executive leaders, including the CEO or even the board member, which are armed or equipped with the power to make decisions very quickly. Because it's called rapid response. So it's very unprecedented times, require unprecedented action, which require to be able to quickly make decisions that are going to affect your people, the operations, and preparing for rebound. Second is to ensure continuity. Again, most big multinational, big organization, large organization, global, regional, GLC, to lesser extent SME, they would have some form of business continuity plan. Example, let me give you an example. When the SARS came on, when the SARS situation, many people are not ready. They do not. Many of the BCP look at IT infrastructure, but when the SARS pandemic back in 2003, 2004, the disruption, the impact on business. So organization, a lot of big organizations learn from that and how to be able to implement business continuity plan across all functions, not only just IT infrastructure. And then we're looking at now, today, now recently, when we look at, for example, Coca-Cola, when the COVID-19 impacted in a very big way in the US, of course, now, of course, before then in China and India and so forth, they start putting in place measures in terms of how they help the workforce to work remotely, or we call now becoming very common, what we call work from home. Okay, work from home, or WFM is WFH is becoming very common, especially when countries start putting in place what we call the travel restriction or social distancing or physical distancing or safe distancing, whatever name you want to call it, to ensure that people not transmitting, because they take precautionary measures to make sure that the interaction by the employee in the workforce, and this happened in Singapore, DBS Bank, there was a case in Singapore, there was many other organizations that has been impacted. I'm sure there are many other organizations in your country, depending on the action they take. So the question is this: so you need to maintain the continuity of business. Business have to continue. The customers will continue, especially if you are providing services, essential services or services that is required by businesses to continue to run. Now, next is very important for you as leader. This is where you look at, as many leaders, that project confidence, stay calm. I think if you look at how, in terms of crisis, when you have huge challenges facing you, unknown enemy like COVID-19, and you do not know what you do not know. There's a lot of things you do not know. The question is, how do you project a sense of calm? But they look for you. People are, your team, your people are looking for you as a source of information, as someone who they can rely on. And it's during this time you need to project confidence. So this is very important. A good example would be Marriott Hotel, the CEO, when he announced that this is going to affect the travel industry, is going to affect many hotels worldwide. The Marriott brand includes Starwood Hotel, Sheraton, and many other W and so forth. So the question is, in many markets, most of hotels are running at 90% empty. So in other words, what do we do? So you need, and some of the hotels have to close. And how people are concerned about their livelihood? Will they continue to have a job? Will they be able to put food on the table? How do I support my family? So here is where your role as a leader is to be able to demonstrate confidence, calm, communicate effectively. And to communicate effectively means you need to communicate promptly and factually. And it's okay to over-communicate. Communicate. What do I mean by that? Make sure that you would make yourself available to allow people to have access, be present, so they can ask you, you can share information. And be adaptive means that you can move, change direction. You need to be able to move quickly during disruptive times. You need to make sure that you have to adopt a agile mindset. And that leads to resilience. How do you bounce back? How do you able to survive and thrive during these unpredictable, unprecedented times? And that includes your ability to engage your team, to support them, coach them, guide them, and also to take care of yourself. It's important to take care of yourself first before you can take care of your employee. What do I mean by that? Take care of your own well-being, your own health. And this is very important, because you do not do that if you're not able to make yourself available. Because if you're not well, you're out of the picture, then you're not able to support your team. Now, trust. Now, trust is a cornerstone of any collaborative leadership. Especially in times like this, you need to demonstrate trustworthiness to your employee, customers, community. And trust is, people look at it from 3 dimensions. One is the intent. What are you trying to do? People wants to understand what's the aim. What you must communicate the intention. Second, your actions speak louder than words. So your actions, you must demonstrate to be a true role model. You need to be mindful of, and third, you're mindful of your non-verbal communication, your tone in your messaging when you have virtual remote communication, even in your messaging in emails and so forth. Now, and then number 8 is about, in times like this, you need to make sure that you identify, and first of all, you need to identify right now who are your key talent. What I mean by that, these are people that you need to keep when the business recover. You need to help them to drive. So the reality is this: not everyone is a talent. So I'm not going to go into that. What is a talent? In my book, I explain in detail a chapter on that. But what is important, you need to know who are the people that you need to keep, who are critical, mission critical. So this is your role as the leader, because these are the people who are going to help you to implement, who are going to drive your rebound strategy when the pandemic is contained or is over. Number 9, of course, your customer experience. You need to improve customer loyalty during times like this. Although you cannot meet the customer, use technology, digital technology, CRM tools to ensure the you're in touch with the customer. They know that you are there for them. What can you do for them? What support can you do? So continuous communication, understanding your customers' challenge, especially B2B, know exactly what are the issues, what the customers are doing. And for B2C, because of the impact on household livelihood, so you need to come up with new packaging, new packages, new solution, new pricing, whatever, to be able to be relevant to the new reality in the marketplace. And lastly, most important to me, I think is part of leadership, is to reflect on what you've learned as you go on learning, and I like this learning agility by Alvin Toffler in the book Culture Shock. He says that you need to learn, unlearn, relearn. So you need to learn as you go through this COVID-19 crisis. What can we learn from this episode? What doesn't work for us? What have we learned from others, from competitors? And how can we prepare for the next crisis? Because the next crisis is going to come. It could be another pandemic. It's possible because, this is something which is, as I said, unprecedented. It can happen again, but you need to be better prepared. Or the next crisis may not necessarily be about biological or viral. It could be about this crisis, could be about all, or it could be about technological, as we expect with the digital transformation of the Industry 4.0. A lot of people are not ready for the digital transformation. So what do you need to do? How do you equip your team? How do you lead the team during this, what I call the disruptive times, unprecedented disruptive times? And that will be the focus of my second book, which, as Chris mentioned earlier, we expected to publish in third quarter of this year. So the question is this: how can you ensure implementation? Based on the VUCA characteristic, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, and the disruptive nature of COVID-19, similar to that of the Industry 4.0, but of course, in terms of magnitude, the COVID-19 is more intense. I would recommend leaders to adopt what we call Leadership 4.0. Again, the details are in the book. I will not go into that. You can go and go to my website and get some insights into that. And get a sample chapter if you want of the book, or you can go to BEP website to get a sample chapter of the book. Let me just go into what is cognitive readiness. Okay, now there are 7 sets of competencies. Now, number 1 is about what we call mental cognition. How do you shift your mental model? So this is the most important. Now, let me explain a little bit about this, because this is where a lot of leaders in time of crisis, they lack. They may be good in their thinking skills. They may be good in your strategic thinking. They may be very creative in coming up with solutions. But what is important is critical thinking, which leads to the point number 5, problem solving. But let me talk about mental connection. So you need to use your higher level of thinking skill, which is called cognitive readiness, your critical thinking with emotional intelligence. So how do you combine both? Emotional social intelligence with cognitive readiness, critical thinking, combine them to be able to shift your mental model, helping you to be able to shift your thought process to be able to come up with solution to solve the problem at hand, to come up with solution to address the challenges posed by the VUCA characteristics of the COVID-19. So, and you need to be calm, and that leads to the next one, attentional control. You need to focus on your team, be present, calm, listen to your team. You need to adopt, and many leaders like to hear themselves speaking. So you need to reduce in terms of less advocacy, more inquiring. So focus on your team, listen to them, engage them, be there for them. They need you because they need psychological safety, as I mentioned earlier. Third is about connecting the dot. This is where a lot of leaders are good at. So because they have been over the years, they've been trained, they've been talking about strategic thinking, they look at dots. So, but what is important here, you need to look at all the different facts that come in. Look at all the information from the various stakeholders, from the board, the shareholders, from your senior leadership team. How can you then put all this together to be able to come up with an action plan? Number 4 is the intuition, your gut feeling. So it's very important to remember, some of us, because the way how we are wired, some of us are looking at facts. Some of us are looking based on our gut feeling. You can use your gut feeling in times like this because based on your past experience, but it's very important that do not let it rule your mind. Now, keep an open mind, listen to the facts presented by your team, by data, by third parties. Then, because you know your organization well, you know your people well, you know what is expected from your stakeholders, you decide, and based on your own gut feel. Sometimes you need to use that, but just be mindful, have a good balance. Number 5, what is also important is to ensure that you develop this problem solving, or what I call complex problem solving, and in the WEF, World Economic Forum, identify this as one of the most important skills in 2020, about how do we develop a complex problem solving skills. Now, this is something which many people are struggling, because to be able to come up with critical thinking is a very, it would be, what we call that. It's challenging to be able to develop that critical thinking because we are used to the same level of thinking to solve a problem. Einstein said best. He says that you cannot solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created it. So you need to look. People used to say, think outside the box. I always believe there should not be any box. In other words, critical thinking is about how do you ensure that you think there's no box and try to look and brainstorm for solution. Number 6 is about agility and resilience. How do you change as the conditions shift? And that you need to do very quickly. A good example in Singapore government, and those of you know, is a graduated approach. And there were a lot of people saying that why doesn't the government do a lockdown in Singapore, where they do measures of the measures. And now in Singapore, we have what we call we are now in the third day of the circuit breaker stage, where to cut down local transmission for 1 month, all businesses except essential services have to work from home or close the business. If you can work from home, you do. If not, the business has to be closed. And this is the challenge we face, and you need to adapt very quickly. And we, as business, the same thing. How do you need to adapt in terms of coming out with solutions? One of my clients is an insurance company, which very quickly, when the government announced the first measure, when Singapore moved to DORSCON rate, is a level of severity in terms of the transmission and the action to be taken by the government, and quickly start implementing multiple teams to support the client in terms of coming out different packages of insurance packages for those who are impacted. And this is about adaptability, how do you respond quickly? And lastly, the most important to me, if you do all this well, the first 6 is how do you inspire? You can have all the skills, but the communication skills is the most important. How do you inspire others? How do you impact others? How do you convince others? Is using the effective communication pathway to influence stakeholders. Use the right tools to be able to ensure the message is communicated to the audience. Now, all these 7 skills are highlighted in the book, The Transforming Generation. It's very detailed and how to do that, how do you implement that. If you want to get a copy of the book from Amazon or BEP website, you can learn more about this, or you can contact us. Yeah. Now, to conclude, I love this quote by John F. Kennedy. Actually, it's not his quote, but he used it, said the word crisis in Chinese is Wei Qi. Wei Qi, if I hope I pronounce it correctly, Wei Qi, W-E-I, J-I, Wei Qi, basically means Wei Xian, from 2 words, Wei Xian and Qi Hui. So it comes from both danger and opportunity. So in other words, when you look at any crisis, there's always danger or threats. There are also opportunity if you're able to think critically, look at what can you do and how can you seize those opportunities. And that's what leadership is all about. It's about ability to develop that what we call the mindset to seize the opportunity and deliver results for your organization. With that note, I will end here, and we're on time, 44 minutes. So let me just hand over back to Chris for the Q&A.
Thank you, Professor Bawany. All right, Prof, maybe you can turn on your video, which you have done. Thank you.
I'll stop sharing the slides. It's a bit easier.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay.
All right, I think, Professor has delivered a very crisp presentation about leadership skills, how to navigate the current situation, the COVID-19 pandemic situation, with the right kind of skill sets for leaders. And I think he speaks very convincingly because he has tapped into his 30 years of experience engaging with business leaders across different industries. So in fact, if he has more time, he will share more actual examples of how he has helped some of the CEOs or senior management navigate different kinds of scenarios. So with that, maybe let's just open up. Noel would unmute everyone. So we'd like to take on questions from anyone. Are there any questions for Professor?
You can also put your question in the chat group, because once you unmute everybody, the background noise.
Yeah, I think maybe Noel, questions, please unmute yourself.
Only those of you who have questions can unmute and ask questions. Easy, otherwise everybody, the background noise is distorting. So is there any question coming?
Right, there's one question. Professor, given what we have seen so far about COVID-19, which is still unfolding on a daily basis, but given what you know now, how do you see the landscape will be drastically changed, after all this is over? Even though we're still, we have not completed the full cycle yet, and what this means for leaders, if there's one key message for us.
The challenge is this: how do you have a sense of optimism? At the same time, you need to be grounded to reality. What do I mean by that? I'm talking to a lot of my clients over the last couple of months, and getting worse by now, and it can get worse in the next 3 to 6 months. Now, there will be many businesses, especially SME, will not survive. as much as many governments try to put in place support packages, economic stimulus, the reality is this: a lot of smaller companies cannot, because they do not have the means, the cash reserves to the infrastructure to financial infrastructure support to sustain. So the way I see it, there would be a lot of consolidation in the marketplace. The larger businesses would be able to leverage, as I said, consolidation. Will leverage on buying up, and there'll be more merger and acquisition. Second is about the way businesses is going to the day-to-day. I mean, the work from home, we never expect you're going to become, it used to be remote telecommuting for some of the businesses where you offer that as an option to your staff. But because of this COVID-19, a lot of companies realize that, it could potentially be one of the way in which they, part of the BCP, Business Continuity Plan, an ongoing BCP. So how things will be different. I think the way we work, how we deliver our services, and I think it's important also. I think from a social, family, and how we interact. I'm not sure. Recently, Dr. Fauci last night was saying that Dr. Fauci is the world top expert from the US and NIH, National Institute of Health in the US, on the Trump Coronavirus Advisory Task Force. He says that it is possible that shaking hands would be something of the past. Now, I'm not sure in Asia, because I think probably in some parts of the world, they may do away with that, but there are some changes that we can expect, how we prepare for the post-COVID-19. What is important is, as I said, things are still evolving, but you need to start now. We cannot wait. As a leader, you need to go back to your board, to your CEO. If you're the CEO, go back to the board and to make recommendations, to think of what are the contingency. I mean, a lot of BCP plan, does not address this. The pandemic in the way it is now is unprecedented, as I say. So this is where in my ongoing research, I've looked at a lot of companies, they are still learning as they go. A lot of learning, and what is important, make sure that you identify the right leaders. A time like this where you can really see who are the high potential, who are the true leaders, because they are the ones who can really demonstrate true leadership. So that means that organization and leaders should always look at identifying, developing, retaining leaders as a core strategy for the organization. Yeah. There's another question.
This is Lee here, Professor Sattar.
Yeah.
Can I give some comment rather than question? Yeah. Because you covered almost everything already. I think there's one more element that is very, very important, I feel, is the transparency and the integrity element. Especially the transparency, we all in Asia, we have that element of what we call, in Chinese, we call pangsei. It's like you have something in your heart, you dare not say, you feel shy, you have like obligation, something like that. So there's no such thing as, transparency element in our Asian culture. So I think for me, it is very important. That's number one. Number two is the trust. You already put it there. And the other thing is the respect, the mutual respect. Whoever says something, we cannot just go and say, I don't think so. We have to give everyone an opening space to allow them to say something that they feel, because they may have some better idea that we don't know, or something like that. So these are the two elements that I would like to give a suggestion that, which I feel is very important as well, especially in our culture. And of course, the third element is going to be the element of integrity. These are the three elements that I am very, what should I say? I think it's very important as well.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
think, yeah, thanks, Mr. Lee. I think, Mr. Lee, you're right. I think transparency is very important. I think my experience and looking at some of my coaching clients, C-suite clients, CEOs, and talking to some of them and advising them, one of the things that a lot of things they do not know. So I said it's okay to tell people you do not know what you do not know, and you will find out the information and to come back to them instead of making up as you go. There are some leaders doesn't want to look vulnerable, and I always tell them it's okay to be vulnerable and tell it's okay. I do not know. I don't have the information. So that is number one. You're right. In terms of transparency, I think you mentioned about integrity. Now, this is the challenge in times like this. What I've seen is where, as I said, where you can really see true leaders coming up and evolve. Because how do we test leaders? And the best way to test leaders is during crisis, and how they respond. And do they take shortcut? Do they the way do they hide things and so forth. So this is a lot of, it's very difficult to actually to assess integrity, because only when it happens then you know. So I think you're right. So that is very important. So I think we can learn. I think thanks for your insight, Mr. Lee. I think transparency to me, besides trust, I talk about, I think transparency is very important, and this is where a lot of leaders have to learn to be comfortable with the fact that they do not know what they do not know.
Yeah, most of the leaders, they are missing one thing. They only want to say something. They don't want to listen.
Correct. Yeah.
One-way traffic. This is
Yeah, that's
very
why,
bad.
absolutely. That's why I
I
said,
used to be one of them.
no, I think, no, I'm sorry, I think you're right, because my experience, a lot of CEOs in coaching them is about, as I said, less advocacy, don't tell, but more listening in terms of sometimes the younger, especially Gen Y and Gen Z, the younger generation, they are more versatile. Their thought process, they'll be able to provide some insights into things. They see things that you don't. We all, as leaders, we all have blind spots,
Yes.
so we need to acknowledge that. Thanks, Mr. Lee. There's another question from Susan. In your opinion, in the group chat, how can we plan while many uncertainties? And do you see this is a good opportunity for companies to promote online or technology-related product? I think this is an excellent question, Susan. I think a lot of companies have already started to do this, leveraging on the fact that people have to work from home, and you need to. Anyway, the online business is part of B2B or B2C should have been a part of any company's strategy as part of what we call the fourth industrial revolution, the digital transformation. So the COVID-19 simply accelerate the pace.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, so it's accelerate the pace, then you need to be able to do it faster, quicker, and because the demand is there. In the next 6 months, a lot of things are going to be delivered through what we call the online. So Susan, you're right. Now, you need to start doing it. It's not too late, because the next 3 to 6 months is going to be more intense. So question is, but you need to look at your differentiating factor. How are you going to differentiate? How are you going to go to market? So a lot of things are out there. A lot of technology is available that you can leverage on to offer a solution to your target audience. Okay. There's another question from Yanti. Dear Prof, leaders challenges to maintain the trust and psychological effect on an employee. How to maintain his own, their own leaders' psychological effect while he or she under stress. I think while you're under stress during this time, you need to take care of yourself. So as I say, I've said earlier that you need to take care of yourself. Now, it's a fact. All of us are going to be affected. The question is the degree and how we respond, how we react. There are people who, because of the level of what I call the adversity quotient, not EQ, but AQ, how you respond to adversity, how resilient you are. So question is, are you able to adopt that agile mindset? So to take care of yourself first, have a person that you go to, a good friend, a confidant, a mentor, or even some companies, they have EAP, employee assistance program, or some support seek doctors' help. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. All of us are worried about family. Is my mother, my father, my grandparents, or my children going to be affected by this? Going to be caught by what do I do? Can I put food on the table? Will my job be affected? Or I'm worried about my team as a leader, worried about the people that work for you. So you need to take care of yourself, have that support system available to be able to provide you. If not, go to doctor, seek help, professional help, counseling and so forth, depending whether the company provide them. So that's important to psychological, and some people have spiritual, they look at religious, spiritual support and so forth. So there are different things work for different people. So I agree that during times like this, you're going to see more and more what do you call a situation where people need to think about how you can protect yourself. There's another question here I have is how can we apply VUCA leadership to higher education industry context? So, education industry, like many other industry, is not unique. You need to be able to understand the education industry, the edutech has been impacted by the digital revolution much earlier. You look at universities have been, offering programs online, the MOOC, the Blackboard, many other technology to deliver the program. So the VUCA, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity for the education industry is impacted due to the digital revolution, about how you need to deliver your solution, your services to your target market in the education, your students, your adult students who are traveling, who are working adults, your campus, on campus. So he has been around for quite some time for education. It's not something new, because he's been around. It will not be as, in my view, it's easier because there are a lot of things that have been done. You can learn from others. What in the US, especially, a lot of experiences, in Harvard, Stanford. There are a lot of online strategy in MIT and so forth. So you can learn and bring it back some of the best practice and adapt. You cannot just take wholesale. You need to learn and adapt and suit to your own business environment, your own local context. Okay. There's one question. One key impact of this one question from Nilani. One key impact for businesses would be scaling. Some of you sent to me privately. I think it's okay to send to everyone so everybody can see the question. One impact for business would be scaling down. This will include laying off your staff. Please share your thoughts. Yeah, see, in my 7 years as the head of the transition coaching and MD of DBM, it's a global outplacement, company provides support to companies that has gone through retrenchment for, I was there from 2006 to 2011. So my experience is this, it's unfortunate it's going to happen. A lot of companies are going to do that. The question is, you need to be mindful of two things, what we call organizational justice and procedural justice. Now, what do I mean by that? Organizational justice is that you need to ensure that whoever you're going to select to be impacted or retrenched or separated, whatever term you call it, that these are people who, you must be fair. If we have 2 or 3 people doing the same job, similar jobs, you need to evaluate, looking at the future of the business, where the future business will be heading, what will be required to drive the business to that future, to envision the future. Once you envision the future, what would be required to drive the success in the future? Then you need to look at who is available internally, who has a skill that would be best equipped to help you to drive the strategy. So number one, so what we call organizational justice. So you must be fair to everyone in the organization. There must not be any prejudice. Second, once you have identified those that would be critical to drive the success, and it could be in a very limited focus, once the future may looks very different than what it is now. So you may have only 20%, 30%, or even 50%, I don't know, could be 50% depending on nature of business of your workforce. So the question is now, you need to ensure how do you communicate to the rest of the remaining 50% is going to be impacted. So what I call procedural justice. So what I mean by that, you need to communicate fairly, clearly, and Mr. Lee earlier mentioned about authentically through your transparency, trustworthiness. People see you. You have to say things openly. That nothing personal. It's not about you. It's not about performance. But the reality is the business is in a different form now. As we move forward, we will require different set of skills, and therefore you do not, in our assessment evaluation, that you do not possess, or you may not do not possess the skill, and we can only have few people, and you are impacted. So question is, what can we do to support you? What can we help you to find jobs, or to reskill you, or find other opportunity in other companies that as a leader you have contacts. So there's things you can do. It's called procedural justice. How do you demonstrate emotional and social intelligence? How do you communicate to them who need to be laid off? But the reality is this, and I'm sad, a lot of companies I spoke to are still not realizing there are going to be a huge number of retrenchment. Yesterday, there was a report in Malaysia, also in Singapore, about the possible retrenchment. It's going to be a huge number. It's going to be a huge number, and this is especially SME. In Singapore, for example, the SME make up 90% of the 90% of the company in Singapore. 90%. It make up 60% of the GDP. It's huge. So we're talking about, in terms of workforce, it's more than 70%. So how do you then mitigate that? So there'll be a lot of people. That's where the government, the nations have to put in place. That's where the government has to address. But this is there's a political consideration. Political consideration, because there's a political cost to this. Economic, political, social, every aspect. So government have to step up, and they are doing that. Whether is it enough, I don't know. I don't think so many, even the US are struggling. Yeah. Okay. So is there any other question?
Thank you, Professor, for taking on the questions. I think that was a very good interaction. And okay, good. Thank you from ENT. So with that, we thank Professor once again for sharing his insights on what kind of leadership attributes are necessary for the post-COVID situation, how we can navigate through. And also, if you're keen to take a look at a book from Business Expert Press that Professor spoke about, please reach out to Noel. For those audience on the call who are not from iGroup, from external parties, you can reach out to Noel through the invitation email that she sent to you. Okay. So with that,
let me guess, yeah. So before you end, this is my contact details. You can email me, or any query, you can email to Noel. I'm sure you received the confirmation of the from iGroup. Received confirmation of the webinar. There's a contact there. Contact her. But if you want other information, you can get resource, videos, article. You can take a screenshot from your screen. Yeah, these are the contacts, and join my Instagram, my Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn to get update. Every day there'll be update about the COVID-19, because I do research and I publish. And there's articles, those articles that I talk about, you can go online and get it free. I make my articles free, except the book, because it's commercial. BEP is a publisher. Only a free chapter. You can get a free chapter, the first chapter, which talk about VUCA and the fourth industrial revolution, but the rest you have to get a copy of the book. And with that, I know I once before, Chris, and I want to say thank you. I'm sure this is, doing webinar is not, been doing face-to-face, over the years. I've been doing webinar occasionally, but I think the interaction is not as great. But I want you to continue the dialogue, questions, keep it coming. And I look forward to seeing you in our next event. Thank you. Over to you, Chris.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Professor Sattar.
My pleasure. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We all really appreciate your help, support, and initiative. We learned a lot today, and your guidance as well. Thank you so much again.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Lee. Thank you, Professor.
Okay.
All right.